Welcome everybody, David Orr here. I'd like to just maybe go over a couple of points that I see on a kind of weekly basis in terms of lessons and club fitting, which is really quite important for everyone's golf bag. If you think about all your iron lofts, whatever manufacturer they are, they're going to be roughly separated by about 5 to 6.5 degrees in loft, which means then your pitching wedges nowadays are roughly between 43 and 45 degrees. And then my question is, what do we do after that? Because that part of the golf bag, the wedges, and whatever lofts they are getting used frequently. Much, much more than your traditional 3 irons, 2 irons, 4 irons for some people, 5 irons for some people. They're positional clubs that we're trying to just put in play or hit the side of a green or on a green. Whereas the lower part of the bag, i.e. the higher lofts, is where we can actually start to save a heck of a lot more shots with the right bounce and with the right loft. So I'm going to demonstrate a shot here. And my own pitching wedge, which I've actually not got, goes 135 yards. So for the demonstration purposes in TrackMan here, I'm going to demonstrate what I can get a 48 degree wedge to, okay, which could potentially be my gap wedge, and I currently use a 50 as well. So I'm expecting something around 118 to 120 yards. So let me film this and have a look, and hopefully we'll do it first time. Okay, again, a pretty good example there of total yardage. Yeah, 120 was always going to be a stretch for me to get a 50 degree wedge there. Okay, so I would comfortably want to play that carry around 115, 116 maximum. So we're trying to then work back from the pitching wedge, 135 maximum, 130. You know, for me, I like to see kind of 13 to 16 yards of a drop downwards. So my golf bag finishes with a 60 degree, you know, and then my wedge of the set finishes at a pitching wedge, okay? So then I've got to say, well, what other wedges am I putting in the middle here? My preference is 50. Some of you maybe prefer 48, depending on, again, what's the loft of the pitching wedge. So for me, 50 degree works really well. 52 might work better for others, depending on how far you're hitting it, depending on the flight. I would say for my 50, I would tend to hit it sometimes greenside as well for closer chip shots, maybe depending on the ground and conditions, for that kind of low releasing pitching shot up the green. But certainly in a full shot, I'm definitely using it more. I think in this part of the bag, we don't want to be having to hit something really softly to take the distance off it, like a soft pitching wedge, or opening the face on a pitching wedge. No, we wouldn't really advocate that, because it would then bring in the sole of the club too much. So really, when we get into kind of fuller shots, we want to know our number exactly what that goes when it's hit full out. Okay, again, so if we're looking into the golf bag, and let's use mine as an example, the 50 degree might carry 115, maybe rolled out an extra couple of yards, depending on obviously ground conditions. Then from there, how do I then get further back down the lofts in terms of down into the 60? I wouldn't go from 50 to 60, because remember what your irons are separated in the loft by. Why would I then go 50 to 60? 10 degree gap. Now, some people I've seen over the years maybe go to a pitching wedge at 43, 44, then they have a sand wedge, traditionally 55, 56. So again, it's massive amount of loft in there and the gap in there. So all of a sudden, they've got a sand wedge that doesn't go the distance any more than, say, 70, 80 yards, but their pitching wedge might go for these people 110. So then they're confused in terms of, I'm going to have to hit a soft pitching wedge because my sand wedge is not enough. And you go, wow, I'm making this really, really hard. So gap wedges fill the gap between the pitching wedge and the sand wedge, and sometimes the gap wedge stroke 54 degree and the lob wedge as well. So it's really important. So I'm now going to hit a 56 degree. So again, hopefully with good calibrations. For me, a good one of these will be just under 100 yards. Okay, so again, this is a really good example of me just hitting a 56 degree here. It's only gone 93.4 yards, but here's something that a lot of people, and what I would advise, and what I personally do, that sometimes don't realize is, so that's definitely 6 yards short of what I'm looking for. So what I did in my clubs and what I would recommend is, in order to close that gap a little bit closer to my 50 degree, I would order a wedge 1 degree strong. So it might say 56 in the bottom, but it plays 55 or maybe 54.5. okay, to give me that extra yardage, okay? So personally, I'm just using ones from the shop. These aren't my exact ones exactly. That's why my 56 here, the one I'm borrowing, is 5-6 yards light, because mine is 55. So again, that's where we trust PGA pros like myself to make the accurate representation of loft through the bag. And again, you'll start to notice 45-degree pitching wedge, 50-degree gap wedge, 56-degree sand wedge, 1 degree strong, and you can see the increments of what I'm going in. Sometimes certain people like to see 6-degree gaps. Again, it's all dependent on where you play, ground conditions, and what you like the look of. Do you like to maneuver the face, angle open? I'm not a huge fan of doing that. So I personally like to get my lofts absolutely great. So I'm a 56-degree loft guy, 1 degree strong. So again, that's a really good recommendation from myself. And again, let's see what the 60 does as well. I thought I would demonstrate again another shot here based on the loft again of sometimes why this might work as well for people's golf bag. And again, we're all individual, remember, but that's where myself would obviously go through a gapping session to get this perfect for you. So I'm going to demonstrate what the 54 goes. Okay, so again, I'm looking for quite a bit of yardage less than 93. So let's see what that does. Okay, let's just see how accurate my striking is on TrackMan, which we know is very accurate. So I'm going to try and show you now what the 54 goes. So if we get our numbers right here, my sand wedge 56-degree was going about 93. We know that mine is playing at 55, which sits just around 99. So now I'm looking, should be getting a 54-degree into the low 100s in terms of total distance. So let me play that shot. Perfect top line number, 102.8, 103. So again, going further than the 56. So for certain players, 54, maybe depending on what their golf bag looks like, it's so individualized, it's incredible. But there should always be a gap between each wedge. And I include the 52, the 54, the 56. So again, I'll demonstrate 60, but again, I hear this a lot, not on 58 as well. Not a lot of people, me included, I don't hit 60 degree that often full out into a green. Sometimes I would hit it if the flag was in a really tight position. Sometimes I might hit it if I'm here and the green's above me, you know, so I need the ball coming in higher, so it's dropping from more of a descent, or possibly downwind into a tight flag, where it's really important the ball's coming in from a wee bit higher instead of coming in too much lower. And obviously around the green, 58, 60s, different bounce options and grind options for opening the face, which I would certainly do as well. But let me play my 60-degree and I'll show you what that kind of distance might look like. Okay, so the number I'm expecting with my 60-degree MG4 is going to be somewhere around 65 to 70 yards full out. But if we remember, my 55-degree wedge goes just under 100 yards. So I would definitely be someday, you might say, well, how do you play 80 yards? I'm quite happy taking a bit off my sand wedge, you know, sometimes by gripping down the handle more for me, making my backswing, you know, maybe a little bit shorter, you know, making sure obviously the body speed and the body turn still is accurate. So I'd rather take and make the 56, 55, if you like, more versatile. That's how I would control the distance in that kind of gap area where I'm a bit in between. But let's play a full out 60 just so I know roughly what it goes. And this is the benefit of this facility. Me, that's about as full as I would want to hit it. It's pitching, it's carrying just under 70 yards, maybe a couple of yards roll, depending if that was a soft environment, that probably wouldn't have rolled much for me there. It would have spun again with a good ball and good groove technology. So again, yeah, let's say 70 yards, which is there or thereabouts. For me, there's that 30 yards of a gap there. So for me, that configuration works for me really well because I like to make the 56/55 work by opening the face and high and low in different trajectories. With a mid bounce, I'm not too crazy in terms of low bounce a lot of the time, depending where we're playing, obviously. So for me, it's very, very individualized. It's not a case of everyone should have a 56. I personally like seeing more loft than a 56-degree. I would always try and advocate more loft, especially in certain problematic shots around the green. I think 58 and 60 do work. You know, I think ladies would work better in graphite and some gents. I think sometimes the steel can be quite heavy. Okay, so I think it's definitely see a lot of that kind of recommendations coming forward as well. as well as technique. But get the gapping right at this end of the bag, because again, as we've said, if you view how often you're in that part of the bag, hitting shots around the green and approaches into the green, it far outweighs the longer stuff in the bag. So keep in touch. Let me know what you think of the video. But gapping session, moving into the off season, it's really important to know your numbers. Okay, I do. A lot of people I teach know their numbers. So it's really important to review, have a look at how things have gone this summer. And if you want more information, you want more advice, come and trust David or myself, use TrackMan, and I'll give you the best advice you can get. Thank you.